Good afternoon and welcome to Atlanta's 2020 Women on Boards conversation on board diversity. My name is Niti Dewan, and I am honored and humbled to be co-chairing this fabulous event with my friend, Jerry Vereen.
Thank you, Niti, and welcome everybody. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here today with Niti and with so many people in Atlanta and beyond. I'd like to take this opportunity to extend a very special thank you to our sponsors, BNY Mellon, Bank of America, RBC Wealth Management, McKinsey & Company, EY, Zoom, Cox Automotive, near and dear to my heart, Chart Industries, and PricewaterhouseCoopers. We'd also like to extend a huge heartfelt appreciation to our leadership committee who helped us pull together such a wonderful audience today, and our planning committee, a very hardworking team of 5 volunteers working really hard today to ensure that we have a very successful event. There are 3 components to today's event. First, you're going to learn about the progress we have made in terms of representation of women on the Russell 3000 boards. Second, you're going to hear stories and valuable insights from our amazing keynote speakers. And third, you will participate in an interactive breakout session with our wonderful group of director coaches. We're grateful to be doing this work together, and we thank you so much for your support and your participation. As the program progresses, we encourage you to use the chat box to engage in the conversation. And if you have any questions during the panel, feel free to add them into the chat and we will follow up with you after the event. Be sure to put your contact information. You can also share, and we encourage you please, to share your insights and images on social media. And remember to include hashtag 2020WOB. If anything happens at all and you get disconnected, please email events@2020wob.com. You don't want to miss any of this, so have your pen and notebook or iPad ready to capture key insights.
Yes, and although we wish we could have been all together in this fabulous room here together, it's actually better that we've pivoted this year to a virtual event because we've got engagement from London, from Boston, Atlanta, and so many other states, people who are here today with us. And of course, in this COVID times, we are being very careful. So Jerry and I walked in, of course, with our masks, and we are keeping our 6 feet distance. And as soon as this is done, our masks will be back on us. So let's all stay very cognizant of our circumstances and be careful. So all of us today are part of a very, very special community. Our community is committed to equity, inclusion, and diversity of thought. We collectively are a part of a movement to promote women and have greater diversity. This movement requires all of us, right? Women, men, directors, company leaders, and community members. None of us can do this alone. We are all in this together. Diversity is important. We all know that. But it's not just the right thing to do. The flip side of this is that, number one, data shows that having women on boards is good for business. Yes, companies with diverse boards perform much better. Second, companies have so many stakeholders, right? You've got your customers, employees, investors, communities. Wouldn't we want our boards to represent these diverse viewpoints? And thirdly, diversity of thought is proven to promote better ideas and improve decision-making. When all directors look alike and sound alike, this can really cause groupthink, stifling innovation. To surface the best ideas, boards need diverse voices. Especially in today's global economy, we need to be able to compete. And in order to do that, innovation is a must. These topics are going to be part of our discussion today. I'd now like to introduce our co-founders of 2020 Women on Boards, Stephanie Sonnabend and Mally Jarrow, who will walk you through the results of our research. A big hand for them, everyone.
Thank you, Niti and Jerry. And thanks to all of you, our sponsors, VIP panelists, leadership committee, director coaches, and especially all of you who are participating with us at this event today. I'm Stephanie Sonnabend, co-founder and chair of 2020 Women on Boards, and I'm here with co-founder and vice chair, Mally Giro. We started the campaign in 2010 because we were dismayed that women were making no progress getting on corporate boards. The numbers have been stagnant for the past decade. And this year, we celebrate the 10th year of the 2020 Women on Board campaign and the completion of the first phase of the campaign. Year over year, we report on the number of women on corporate boards on the Russell 3000, the largest publicly traded companies in the US, which we feature in our Gender Diversity Index and database published annually on our website. When we started the campaign in 2010, the percentage of women on the Russell 3000 had been stagnant at around 10%. Since then, the number of women has steadily increased in the past 4 years, going from 16% nationally to 22.6% women on the Russell 3000 boards in 2020. And at the same period, the percentage of women directors on the Russell 3000 companies headquartered in Georgia climbed from 16.8% to 22.3% over those same 4 years. So Georgia now is very close to the national average. Among the 25 states in the US that have more than 20 companies on the Russell 3000, all but 2, Florida and Utah, exceed the 20% goal for women on their boards this year. The states that achieved more than 20% for the first time are Arizona, Colorado, Indiana, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, and Texas. Georgia exceeded 20% women on boards in 2019. Of the 77 companies headquartered in Georgia, 60% are at 20% or greater. There are 154 women directors in Georgia on Georgia headquartered companies. So imagine if all Georgia companies on the Russell 3000 were at 20% or greater. All that is needed is between 35 and 44 women, depending whether they add a seat or retire a man. It's actually not that big a hurdle to overcome. And perhaps some of you here today in attendance will fill some of those seats. This year, we're celebrating our success and the completion of the first phase of the campaign. Yet we all know the 20% goal is no longer good enough. As Melody Hobson said at the Global Conversation on November 12th, we are pleased but not satisfied. Here to talk about what's next with the campaign is my good friend and co-founder, Mally Giro.
Thank you, Stephanie, and I am thrilled to be with you in Atlanta today. If 20% is no longer good enough, well, what is? Beginning in 2021, our campaign will advocate for parity on boards, what we're calling gender balance. It's a bold goal, and we are ready for the challenge. So where are we now? Nationally, 163 out of 2,982 Russell 3000 companies are gender balanced, just about 5%. In Georgia, 1 out of 77 companies have achieved gender balance. So Georgia, we have our work cut out for us. Our new vision, all public companies will be gender balanced with women holding half of corporate board seats. Let that be a model for all boards, public companies, private companies, nonprofits, trade and government advisory boards, and commissions. To support this new vision, as of January, we will change our name to 50/50 Women on Boards. And this is usually where we ask you to all applaud. So our highly popular virtual Get On Board workshops will resume in February 2021, helping board ready women position themselves and network to get on board. And if you think you might want to attend, don't wait to register. They fill up fast. And what I forgot to mention before, but I want to come back to, is we may have this new name, but we hold to the same core values. We still will educate, collaborate, and advocate for more women on boards. So getting back to our programs, in our first quarter in 2021, we will announce a new program, Path to the Boardroom. And this program is for women in mid-careers who are interested in exploring how to become board ready within the next 5 to 10 years. So look for that at the beginning of the year on our website. So you can find out more about us and our programs, our campaign, on our website, 2020wob.com, soon to be 5050wob.com. Join our conversation on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Thank you so much. And Needy, back to you.
Wow, Mally, thank you for sharing that information. 50-50, huh?
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I think we've got to do it. Thank you very much. So now let's set the stage for our discussion today. No matter who you are and where you are in your career, we want to leave you inspired, energized, and with some very valuable information. Whether you're a CEO, a sitting board director, a curious community member, we want you to be plugged in today. While all 5 of our panelists are women and sitting board directors, they represent a diversity of race, age, boards, industries, viewpoints, stories, you name it. While our questions today will cover a variety of topics, including their personal stories, why and how they joined their first board, tips on being a good director, thoughts on diversity, and lessons learned along the way. We are dealing with a crisis this year. It's been one after the other, right? And we will touch on that theme as well of women directors during times of crisis. How do we react? What do we do? Now, with a drum roll, ready, Jerry? Let's go. We would like to introduce our 5 panelists. Jerry, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Our first panelist I'd like to introduce is Janine Bowen. Janine is a partner and member of the Digital Asset and Data Management Group, Baker Hostetler. She is currently immediate past board chair for Goodwill of North Georgia and also currently sits on the board of directors for Clemson University and serves as advisory board chair of the Clemson University College of Engineering, Computing, and Applied Science. Janine was the first woman to be awarded the Distinguished Service Award, the highest award given to an alumnus by the Clemson University Alumni Association.
Sharda Cherbu. Sharda is a retired EY partner. She was with EY for over 37 years, 28 as a partner. She has held a wide range of leadership positions involving global entrepreneurship, intelligent automation, strategic practice development, and business unit management. As CEO of EY's Global Shared Services, Sharda pioneered the firm's offshore shared services initiative and spearheaded EY's intelligent automation initiatives, which her influence led the board to invest heavily in automation. Sharda has received the 2017 Gold Stevie Award for Innovation of the Year for her strategic leadership and implementation of robotics at EY. Sharda is a member of the board of World Fuel Services Corporation, a Fortune 100 company, and she also serves on the board of Tax Analyst. Now that's close to my heart since I have a tax background. And she has been invited to join the New York Stock Exchange Board Advisory Council Network, which is founded by 15 New York Stock Exchange CEOs.
Shan Cooper. Shan is the former transformation officer of WestRock, and prior to joining WestRock, Shan served as vice president and general manager of Lockheed Martin Aeronautics Company. She serves on the board of directors for the Atlantic Capital Bankshares, Georgia Power Company, Verity Corporation, the Girl Scouts of Greater Atlanta, and the board of trustees for both Emory University and the Woodruff Arts Center. Shan is also on the board of Georgia Tech Research Institute, Georgia Historical Society, Zoo Atlanta, and a life member of the Board of Counselors for the Carter Center. Shan was named Georgia Trend Magazine's 2015 Most Respected Business Leader, the 2015 Women of the Year by the American Association of University Women, and as one of Georgia Trend Magazine's most influential Georgians in 2012 through 2016, and again in 2020. She was also named one of Black Enterprise Magazine's most powerful executives in corporate America in 2017.
Bonnie Hill. Bonnie has a wide-ranging career in business, government, education, and philanthropy. Her experience includes over 29 years in corporate governance, serving on, are you ready for this? Serving on 12 various corporate boards and numerous nonprofits. She currently serves on the board of Bank of California and the Rand Corporation. Former corporate boards that she served on include California Water Service Group, the Home Depot, Yum Brands, Inc., and AK Steel Holding Corporation. Dr. Hill co-chaired the NACD Blue Ribbon Commission report on building the Strategic Asset Board, which was published in 2016, and she received the 2019 Lifetime Achievement Award from the Forum of Corporate Directors. She was honored by the National Association of Corporate Directors with the B. Kenneth West Lifetime Achievement Award, recognized by the NACD directorship as one of America's most influential people in corporate governance in 2010, and again in 2011 as Outstanding Director by the Financial Times, Outstanding Director Exchange. Wow.
And last but not least, Kathy Waller. Kathy is a native of Atlanta, retired in March 2019 after 32 years with the Coca-Cola Enterprise, where she was Chief Financial Officer and President of Enabling Services. She led the company's global finance, technical, and shared services organizations. Kathy serves as a board member for Delta Airlines, CGI Group, Cadence Bank Corporation, and Beyond Meat. She is also a member of the Board of Trustees of Spelman College, the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra, the Girl Scouts of Greater Atlanta, and Achieve Atlanta. Welcome to our wonderful panelists. Thank you for being here, and let's get started.
Are we ready? Let's go. All right. I'm going to start the first question, and I'm going to turn it over to Sharda and Janine to answer this. First Janine and then Sharda. So today, gender diversity and racial diversity are essential business topics for corporate boards. Do you see more companies truly embracing diversity? And how are boards effectively increasing diversity through proactive succession planning?
So that's a great question. It's good to be with you folks today. I think the cultural climate has definitely forced companies to self-assess and determine where they are with respect to racial diversity. We've seen kind of performative changes and optics changes around brands, companies making position statements around racial injustice, and we see the starting points of more inclusion. The question really is, will it stick? Or will we simply go back to business as normal? And then will it include manifesting more fully in board recruitment? I think that remains to be seen. But for sure, the board chair and the chair of the nominating committee, or whatever it might be called in each individual board, plays a critical role in making sure that these things happen. Filling the pipeline with diverse talent is very important. If the board chair does not advocate for it, or the chair of NomCom does not advocate, then the opportunities are diminished, especially in the private company context. There may be more pressure in the public company context, but for sure, we need those board leaders to be fully engaged in the process of diversifying the pipeline. So we think the opportunity is ripe, but we definitely need to see the manifestation on a go-forward basis.
Thank you, Janine. Sharda, would you like to comment?
trying to get off mute. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. It's great to be amongst everybody. And the points Janine's made are huge, right? It's certainly about the board chair and making sure there's a great pool, a diverse pool that's considered. I mean, there's been enough studies that basically say that if you don't really even get diverse pools in, you're not even gonna make the cut. But the other thing that I think about a lot, especially I joined my first board this year, is diversity. If you just look at it as a stat, it's very superficial, right? So the question is, how do you dig deeper into the whole diversity thing, and how do you kind of make it real in organizations and in a board? You might have diverse people around the table, but then how do you make it real? One of the things that I'd heard, one of the talks I'd heard, at least made it very real for me as I was thinking about this topic, is when you look at diversity, it's a stat. But when you look at inclusion, it's about including someone, right? It's a choice. I can decide to include someone in a conversation. I can decide not to. So it's a choice. But the real guts of what this is all about is about really belonging, the feeling, and that's a feeling, right? We've all experienced that in our lives, right? When you're in a room, whether you feel like you belong or whether you don't, and that feeling itself, and to make people feel as part, even after you get the stats right, let's say, or even if you get them up, the question is the board, are the people around the table giving you that feeling, making you feel empowered to ask the right questions, right? To ask questions at all, actually, in the first place. So, I mean, from the board and some of the just things that I've experienced on my first board that have sort of given me that feeling of belonging, that I think are best practices. I joined right before the pandemic. I joined in February, right after retirement, and I attended my first meeting in person. But the subsequent meetings have all been virtual, right? So I at least got to get to meet people, have the dinners and everything else in my first meeting. But what has transpired thus far, which I think is sort of certainly makes me feel, we just got off a board meeting thing this morning, is the fact that every single director actually reaches out and just asks, how am I doing, right? Or before the board meeting, if there's something to be looked at, do you have any questions? So and I am pretty proactive as well, try to before the meetings ask, hey, can we just go over this, or because there's a lot of stuff that I certainly don't understand about the business as I'm learning and going up the chain in terms of understanding the width of the business and the complexity of the business. What I find doing a lot, which I think has sort of helped me a lot, is having these one-to-ones where I'm actually on three committees. I'm on the Tech and Ops Committee, on the Sustainability, the ESG Committee, and the Governance Committee. But being able to talk to the leaders who've been around there a lot longer than I have, and ask them some of the questions, go through the information, and have that one-to-one time. And I literally do it a couple of times a month, even in between the board meetings, right? And the CEO, himself, Michael's very proactive, right? And he'll pull you into situations, and which I find really empowering, at least, and so I think that's the point I wanted to really make, is how do you, despite having a stat, create the feeling of belonging? And that is sort of a joint responsibility. It's something that I think is sort of a two-sided thing, right? It doesn't work one way. So
Thank you,
what I wanna make
Sharda.
sure-
That is perfect. Thank you so much. The next question I would like to ask of Bonnie and Janine, and we'll start with Bonnie first.
Well, may I go back to the
Oh,
first?
yes, absolutely, absolutely.
I agree with everything that's been said. There are a couple of ways that I also look at this. And number one is, how do you define diversity? Because the conversations that are being held now talk about diversity in a very broad way, including how people think, which you may not be able to see. So we could look alike, but we could think incredibly differently.
Mhm.
The other thing is, you have to make diversity a business imperative. And the reason it has to be a business imperative, because shareholders want us first and foremost to deliver value for them. And they want us to deliver that value in a way that brings everyone in. So if you take a look at your customer base, for an example, or your employee base, if the board doesn't reflect them, then we start off with a disconnect. So it has to be a business imperative. We have to understand what shareholders are looking for, including diversity. And we have to understand that that diversity is of thought. It can be global, it can be gender, it can be ethnicity, it can be all kinds of things. But the bottom line is it really must be a business imperative. So
Yeah, that's a great comment, Bonnie. And it actually sort of segues into the next question that I'd really like for you to kind of add on, if you don't mind. So with everything going on today, from the pandemic to political changes to the social unrest, what kind of experience do you really think boards value today? I mean, is the experience leading companies through crises make the corporate directors more valuable? Is this what they're looking for? And I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Okay, yes, I think there are a couple of things. One, as we all know and have said, one size doesn't fit all. So every company and every board is very different. One of the things that I believe has happened more recently is that boards have to take a look at their overall strategic plan. The strategic plan that they had a year or two ago may not fit post-pandemic. And once looking at that strategic plan, I really think they need to go back and look at the board and say, okay, does this board bring the values, bring the experience and the knowledge that we need for whatever will be the new normal? And I think directors themselves have to be prepared to step off if in fact, their particular expertise has become less valuable to the company. For an example, someone who is really strong in, let's say, manufacturing, and maybe manufacturing has changed a great deal. So maybe now technology becomes more important. So, you look at your board and you say, do we have that experience or expertise, or do we need to bring someone on who has that experience and expertise? And every board member really should look at themselves in terms of the value that they bring to the board and also to the shareholders. So there oftentimes has to be a shift there. And since most boards that are declassified have annual elections, it's okay to say, this year we're going to sort of change one or two directors out and propose those to the shareholders. Does that answer the question, I wonder?
Yeah, and that's good because I think it starts opening up the opportunities. Janine, I would like to hear your thoughts on this as well, if you could.
Yeah, so I think that's a great point, specifically on the strategic plan. Everyone needs to reset their plan, because whatever their goals were for 2020 have changed some way in respect to their five-year
right?
It just out the window. So I think that's a great perspective. And I also think that specific expertise still remains important, but broad perspective is also important. And so it's critical to know where your lane is with respect to the specific value that you bring to the board, but bring the fullness of your experience into the environment. So certainly the board needs to be able to have the willingness to put policies in place that empower the CEO to execute on the promise of the enterprise. That was coming into the pandemic. Now that requires shifting in the middle of it and will require further refinement as we move out of it in 21 and 22. And I do think that experience managing in a crisis is important because you need that perspective that different lens of crisis provides. If your board members have only served in times of prosperity, then they lack the viewpoint of how to deal with crisis. And so it is always important to have, again, that balanced perspective, having lived through promise and pain, okay, to deal with what's next. I think that also creates the discipline to deal with tough decisions, because we have to understand the difference between a hard decision and a sad decision. Hard decisions really make you struggle and figure out what's the right thing to do in a universe of imperfect solutions. A sad decision is one you really don't want to make, but it's pretty clear what it should be. And so that, again, that crisis perspective gives you the ability to think more clearly through that lens.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you're so right. So, all our playbooks that we had for business, they went out the window this year, right? So we had to pivot in every situation. So this next question I'd like to ask of Shan initially, and this is, we want to understand what are the different committees on a board? And, we are starting to hear more about ESG, cybersecurity, digital marketing, compensation issues, some of these other expertise areas. Could you share a little bit about that with us?
Sure. Thanks again for having me today. Really excited to have this conversation always. So let me start by saying that boards have pretty standard boards. You're going to have your nominating governance, board. Those are the folks that are going to be actually selecting new candidates and ensuring that you're operating and that your governance is appropriate for the organization and the board. And you're going to have, typically you'll have that compensation committee because everybody cares about getting paid, right? Compensation is important to all of us. And then you'll have the audit committee, which is a critical committee. Again, as you think about public boards having to disclose where they are financially, working with external auditors and things like that, and just all of the critical internal controls that a corporation needs to have in place to be successful. And so those are typically the standard boards. I actually, one of my boards, the Atlantic Capital Bank Board, one of the committees I serve on is around leadership. And that was my first time being introduced to a committee that focused on leadership and a hardcore focus on talent in the organization. And I think we all know how important talent is, right? And nothing happens without the people that make up organizations. And so you have your standard boards. And I would, building on what the previous speakers have spoken today, I've just really enjoyed their comments because they're just so right on. And as I think about the boards on which I have the opportunity to support and serve, oftentimes, we are encouraging, I'm always encouraging, women to, get involved, join boards, that our voices need to be heard. At the same time, I want to also encourage us, however, to do our homework and not jump at the first board opportunity that comes your way. I was offered numerous boards early in my career, recognized first of all that I had to first perform my job, right, before I could go help another organization. So I turned many opportunities down initially. But as I got to feel comfortable in my roles and what have you, and had an opportunity to step out there and take on my first board, I was very selective. One, I wanted to ensure the industry fit with what I wanted to be supporting and helping, right? The next thing is I wanted to ensure that it was a challenging opportunity for me to continue to grow, but also that I'd be able to bring my expertise or what I could, a level of confidence to the board. I can't tell you how many interviews I went through or calls I received. And when I would ask that first question, why me? It became very clear to me it was only me because of the color of my skin or that I was a woman. And I just refused to serve on boards and who clearly said, I had one CEO say to me, well, Shan, actually, my board's actually just fine. I just need you there. And when they couldn't explain to me why you needed me there, right? The boards I serve on today, the CEO and the board chair was very clear to say, Shan, this is exactly what we need. You bring a manufacturing background, you bring technology background and innovation. And that's because you want to be a part of something that's meaningful, that you can really contribute. So I would tell you to be selective. The other two things that I look for, the last thing I've seen, I wanted to know exactly where the company was and it would be exciting and I could contribute. But also I wanted to ensure that I could work with these other board people, right? And so I've always said, I want to have one-on-ones, not just with the Nom and Gov committee. I want to meet with every board member because that fit and that energy and that chemistry, you just want to have that, right? I mean, you go to your job every day and you commit to the companies where you work, from day to day, and you're there, right? Some days are good days, some days are bad days. If we're candid, this board thing, I'm making a choice, right, to step into this. And so I want to work with people that I feel good working with. And so far, I'm knock on wood, it's been good for me. And I heard Sharda talking about joining her first board this year. I actually joined Verity this year, Sharda, and we've not had one face-to-face board meeting. And so that's been fun. But to your point, you were so right on. I love to hear you kind of validate that I did the right things. And like you, I just reach out and I call the board members, we call each other, and we look forward to having a face-to-face board meeting together, but the work still gets done. And so as you enter these companies, you'll see different kinds of committees, but those are pretty much the standards. And I went all the way around the world for that, Nene, but I wanted to share that out while I could have did. The ladies before me had just spoken so beautifully about their experiences. So thank you.
Shan, that's something very important you just said, that it has to be meaningful. So
Can I add something to what Shan said?
Please.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. I'm enjoying the conversation and listening to my fellow panel members. During the summer, I had this interesting experience where I was getting a lot of phone calls because of companies making statements about them needing to diversify their boards. And I use the same criteria that Shan used in terms of the ways in which I determine the boards that I need to be on. And then I started thinking about, and so really, this is almost posing a bigger question, because some boards don't recognize yet the need for diversity. And yet, so we need to help them. And so somebody's got to diversify the board sometimes before they actually understand the value that diversity brings. So, I struggle with that now, as I listen to or I read about a company that says they're going to add X number of board members. And I think, okay, they're just going to start calling people until they get, a certain number of board members. But somebody really needs to go on and show them the value of diversity. And so I'm really struggling with that for how do I advise people about whether to take a board position or not under those circumstances? But I truly believe in the strength of diversity. And I truly believe that people will show their value when they get on that board, and they will prove to that board that they did the right thing by diversifying. So, what do? If you know that the board has made these public statements and that they're looking for board members, and they've likely called you because you're going to diversify their board, yet and still you do bring value, and you will bring something that's a very important perspective to that board. So I'm really struggling with that one. So Shan brought that up. I thought I would raise that.
May I weigh in there?
Please, Bonnie, go ahead.
I think Shell said, really set the stage for a very important question that goes to yours, Kathy. And like Shell, I've turned boards down because one of the first questions you say is, why me? You ask, why me? Mm-hmm. If they say we need to diversify our board, wrong, all wrong. So, my first board, some of the people in the room heard, a search firm approached me, and the CEO flew into Washington to meet with me. And he walked in and he looked at me, and the first thing he said was, well, we weren't necessarily looking for a woman or a minority, but you have the experience and background that we need. So I guess that's okay. So I looked at him and started laughing hysterically. And then he started laughing. And then we realized, what he had said and why we were there. He already had 2 women on his board, no people of color. And needless to say, I went on that board. Fast forward, that company was acquired by a London-based company, and they were going to take one of our directors. And I got the call. So they set up a meeting. They brought all of their committee members in to meet me in Boston. And I had already thought about why they were asking me. Walked into the room, they sat down, we were having lunch. And my first question to them was, why me? Because all my friends had said the Brits are very chauvinistic. And they said, we looked around our room and I thought, here it comes. And they said, we have no one who understands US government. You've worked for 2 presidents in 3 roles. You understand US government. We need that expertise. Right answer. So, that's important in terms of how you make decisions about boards, because I've turned a number down as well. I wanted to go back a moment to the committee assignments. And one of the committees that Shaw mentioned was very important, saying that now one of her boards has a leadership committee. We're in Atlanta. This is Atlanta based. I served on the board of Home Depot for 15 years, including serving as lead director. And what we did years ago was to change the non-gov compensation to leadership development and compensation, which calls for leadership within the company, on the board, and the development going forward, and then compensation. So we have to be mindful that most boards only have maybe 9 to 12 members. How many different committees can you have? And how many committees can be expanded to take on different roles? And sometimes committees may form a subcommittee of that committee, particularly if you're dealing with a merger or acquisition. So I'm sort of agreeing with everything that's been said and injecting a slightly expanded thought. Thank you.
And this is a great segue. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
let me chime into that, because that's a good point. And I struggle with the things that Kathy is talking about as well. I think every one of us on this call has been the first in the room. Okay. And we know the struggles of being the first in the room. But we also know if there is not a first, there will never be a second. Right? So someone has to be first. And so you have to determine, I think, whether you can consume enough space to make that first, for you to be the first player in the space, because that is a difficult role to sit in when you represent the only of many different diversities, right? And so that requires a toughness of self. Now, it does require the right people around you in that board setting such that you believe that you can add value, right? We clearly have been in environments where we walk in and say, there's no matter what I do, I will not add value to this setting because this setting does not want me to add value. But in scenarios where people want you to add value and the only way they know how to say it is, I need a Black woman, you at least need to interrogate that further before you reject
that. You have to be careful.
That's right. I agree.
Because if you're sitting in the boardroom and you're looked at as the Black person or the woman, with no other value added, then that's going to be a challenge. It doesn't open the door for others. So I'm agreeing with you, Janine, and I'm saying just to make certain that your value comes before your face, before your color and your gender. I have never sat on a board where when I spoke, people didn't listen. And that becomes very important. You don't want to be there. And when you speak, they go, okay, that's Bonnie again. You know, doesn't work and it doesn't open the door for others.
Correct.
So, you know, I'm agreeing with you and just, you know, sort of adding to that.
Yeah, I affirm that. And I believe that just means that it requires additional diligence on our part to determine whether we should take that role, right? Clearly, it's not a black and white. It's not a binary. There's a lot of nuance in the decision making. So I think we're saying the same thing, but we've got different context around it. Yeah.
So you'll both you bring up some great points. And what I would tell you is, I think y'all have been very visible in the community. And so that you've had that opportunity where people have reached out to you. What I'd like to talk a little bit about, and I'd love for y'all's thoughts on this, you can tell I'm Southern. There is no way to apply for board positions, right? The corporate board positions aren't posted. They're not announced publicly. And the succession planning is going to be very confidential, typically, closely held, managed by the current board. And we know what a lot of those boards look like. So outside of traditional networking opportunities, what kind of advice would you give or would you suggest for non-traditional networking habits that would work? And Charlotte, since you've recently joined, could you chime in here?
Sure. You know, as I think about this so much, it's start early and start often, right? If you've gotten, I mean, I spent 37 years at EY, and I knew I was going to retire. There's mandatory retirement at 60. And if you really start that journey, but when you have to, it's a bit too late. Because if you look back at, you know, how do board directors get selected? I'm sure things are changing. It's moving, but it's really about trust and relationships at the end of the day, right? And relationships are a long-term thing, right? Relationships don't happen just because I met someone at a networking event and I exchanged a business card and then I sort of disappeared for 20 years and I expect something back and forth. It doesn't happen that way. So part of, and at EY, I've always been in a relationship game because every firm has great people and you kind of have to, you get work because of I guess, skills, but relationships play a big part. So what I intentionally, for my work and everything else, have been very focused on, first of all, you have to let people know that you're looking, right? And reach out to the network. And what I was very encouraged by is when I reached out to my first 150, I kind of have a spreadsheet going. Just let them know I'm looking out. You have to put your stuff together, your bio and everything else. But when you reach out to people and reach out to them, what I found really encouraging is literally, I mean, that spreadsheet's 1,300 people now, right? And that's because every person is sending you, not that you have, sending you different people to talk to. And that exercise in itself shows sort of the multiplier effect of relationships and the fact that you've sort of seeded it from a while ago. And one of the things that I've it's probably I think when you come from a very relationship oriented system and grow up in that system, and that's sort of what binds you together. It's a little bit more in the sort of water system. So I mean, this is 25 years. I mean, Mother's Day, I have my little Mother's Day little note go out, or Thanksgiving, and this goes out to a large group of people, and even though I might not have seen them for a while, or Father's Day or Memorial Day, so I kind of have my little lists, and I've done this for 25 years, and so people that I've gotten to know over time or whatever else. I mean, that's just one sort of minor thing, but I think the point I want to make is this is about giving, right? And I've certainly grown up. My mom has been the best giver of the world. You kind of learn, and you giving without expecting anything in return, right? And that's sort of been the philosophy. And you never know, and you kind of almost have to have a 360-degree sort of frame of giving or helping, right? In whatever small way you can, when someone calls, that little help or whatever that might be. That philosophy early on in your life pays a lot of dividends, right? And it's never too early to start. You can start at age 2, right? But I think that's the point I want to make, is this is about relationship and trust. So at the end of the day, I think what the board members are also around the table that you talk to that are trying to assess is, can I sort of trust them? Do I have a relation? The point that was made earlier, the chemistry piece, right? That becomes hugely important. And I totally agree with the fact that, you want to be around people that you really want to be working with. You really want to be around people that, there's that mutual respect, there's that mutual camaraderie and all that stuff. And how do you assess that? And that becomes critical. And so the point that Jan made about being selective, it's huge. It's huge. Ishan, I mean, you can't, it's no point jumping into something because, I view everything as a very long-term commitment, right? You can't be just jumping in and out, and you just have to figure out, and mistakes get made, we all make mistakes, but I think that whole relationship factor, start early, and just keep seeding, investing in relationships from literally the day you begin your career or even before.
That's perfect.
Can I add a thought?
Please.
To what Sharda said. So I truly believe in the value of relationships. Relationships have been very important in my development and in my life and how I got on my various board positions, without a doubt. But I would also say that something else you said about kind of giving and paying it back, paying it forward, if you will, because when I meet talented people, talented women, I often will recommend them, even though I don't have a relationship with them, right? but I've met them and they're talented and I'm impressed by them. And so it can be a short term, I mean, you know, literally, I mean, a conversation with them and if I know that they are in a position to accept a board position or they're interested, and I get a call from a recruiter, I will say, you know, I met someone that I thought very highly of, you know, and then I know they'll be vetted by the recruiter, they'll be vetted by the company. The company will ask their board members if anybody knows them. I mean, all of that process will happen. But I think particularly because we have to expand the opportunities for board positions to other women and other minorities, that you really can't just depend on, you know, having known somebody for 20 years before you put them forward.
Yeah, that's a great point. That is a great point. You're absolutely right. Right. Yeah.
I think one of the things that we as directors, those of us who are first, have been first, can do is also, if we're going off of a board, not just going off, but even looking at other candidates, to do exactly, you know, what Kathy and Janine have said. When I went off of the AK Steel board, I was going off. They started looking a year to 2 years before my retirement age. And another friend that I had helped get on her first board said, I've got someone I want you to meet. And we met by email, chatted by phone. We were at a conference together, so I got a chance to see her face. And when it came time to look at candidates, I put her bio forward to the committee. And I said, here's a person that has all of the credentials that I think you need. And they knew it was a woman because of the name, but the CEO and the chairman loved her background. They met with her and they came back and said to me, you didn't tell us she was African-American. And I said it was irrelevant. You know, fast forward, she went on the board to replace me. And I have tried for every board that I go off of to at least put forward candidates that are African-American, female, male, either, but just as long as I am helping to advance, aside from being on a committee where I help look for directors as well. But, you know, you really shouldn't go off of one without replacing yourself with 1 or 2 or 3 others if you can. And so I'm agreeing with Janine and, you know, with Kathy, that we have an obligation to give back. And that's one of the ways you play it forward, you know, is make certain that you are putting candidates that you can vouch for before the committee, before the CEO, and so forth and so on. So thank you all for weighing in on that one.
Just
So
one,
I was just
I
gonna
know we
say,
gotta
so-
move on. Just one quick one though.
Yes.
Don't forget, serving on nonprofit boards give you a good grounding, a good experience. That's how I got my first board. I was serving on a nonprofit board with a couple of other CEOs here in Atlanta. They got to know how I work. I got to really learn how a board operates. So don't forget, I think Sharma said it's about giving back. Start there, because in many ways, you'll get the exposure. People will get to know that your competencies and your capabilities in that way. So serve in nonprofit boards if you can as well. Thank you.
So Janine, what's the one thing you would recommend that women don't do in pursuit of a corporate board?
Don't expect to be seen. Okay, don't expect that people will see how brilliant and how talented you are. You have to make your desires known. So, some ladies have said this already. You have to, you can't rely on my talent speaks for itself. Or of course, people know this is next, what's next in my development. There has to be an intentionality to your design, an intentionality to your strategy. And you have to open your mouth and tell people that you need help. Okay. And so often we have a sense of, especially people who have achieved a lot and have a lot of strength about them, are very independent and can walk in their own shadow. Okay. But for something like this, you need to let people know where your desires are for your professional development and to ask for help getting there. So what you don't do is expect that people will know what you want. And what you don't do is expect for people to see your light around you. You have to open your mouth and communicate it.
I like
That's
that.
a great point. That's a great point. That's a phenomenal, and asking for help. And I think you're right. I mean, none of us will ever, I don't think, ever be in a position where we don't need help of some sort or some kind. of whatever dimension. So asking for help and asking people to even sort of look at, I had a lot of trouble with, well, what's my elevator speech going to be like? What am I going to highlight? What am I going to say that's going to stand out in a short period of time? And having people help you with that thinking, is huge, and many other dimensions.
If I can add one thing, you need to be, she mentioned, Charlotte mentioned her elevator speech. You need to be really tight and crisp on why you want to join a board. When you can't articulate that's not going anywhere. You're dead in the water. And the other thing I would suggest you do not do, and I have seen this unfortunately, is that people have been trying for a long time, and they are, maybe they're asking for help, but they come off as, it's an unfortunate word, but the word is desperate. I mean, they come off as that they've been trying so hard and they can't get, it's not, there are so many other ways to serve, right? And that will get you noticed and get you into get the support that you need. You do not need to have to come off as desperate to get into a board position.
And there is one other thing I would add. If you're working for a company, you have to make certain that your CEO or whomever is supportive of you serving on a corporate board, and that also he or she may be able to assist you. I can remember at Yum Brands, David Novak would come to the board and he'd say, look, board experience is great. I'd love for our execs to be able to serve. So if you know of any opportunities for them, you know them well, please, let us know so that we can move forward on it. So, looking for directors below the C-suite also becomes a factor, because there are rising stars that may not be in the C-suite yet, but are going to be there if you're looking at someone in corporate America. I think the other thing is, and I think the point has been made, perhaps it was Janine or Kathy, I'm not sure, but that, you really don't wait until you're retiring from a job to say, now I'm ready to serve on a corporate board. It is not your next gig. And if you can get on before you retire from your current job, then that would be a great thing. And I think, as Charlotte said, it starts, the process took a long time. And I've known it to take 2 to 3 years for a person to get on a board, even after being under consideration. So it's never too soon to start.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. So we could sit up here talking to you for the next 2 days, and we would still gain so much from all of you, but we're getting to that time. So what I would like to ask in closing is if each of you would just state either one word or a quick one sentence as our takeaways and nuggets of wisdom that you want to share with us. Bonnie, we can start with you.
Oh, don't do that. I was looking for one word. If I were to use one word, I'd say diligence. Continue to be diligent in terms of your search. Pay attention to all of these brilliant women that have been speaking with you, and stay the course. You have something to offer, stay there.
I can add a thought to the diligent persistence point. Cast the net wide. Don't underestimate where the opportunities can come from. So cast the net wide, reach out.
Okay. Janine?
Say, be patient and continue to be excellent, because it takes time.
Like that.
Sure, I can go next. I would say focus on opportunities to learn and develop, because as you continue to develop yourself and people know you're developing yourself, that keeps people interested in you and allows you to continue to grow your network. And that's how you eventually, become successful and get your first board position.
And this is Shan. I would say preparation. And because one of the things that you probably don't realize that it's real work when you're serving on a board. It sounds great, looks great on your bio. People love you because you're on a board, you're special. But the reality is it's work, because not just your company, but now another company is depending on your expertise and your commitment and your leadership, and you're making, decisions that could impact, that will impact people's lives, right? And so I would say be prepared, just be prepared.
Thank you. Thank you, all of you. This was truly, truly inspiring. We appreciate you sharing your journeys and giving us just so much to think about today. My one takeaway that is important to me and what I heard is diligence, do your homework, and make sure that you're prepared.
A wide network.
Wide network, cast a wide net. Now, as we shift gears to focus on you, we are going to start breaking out into the breakout rooms to give you the opportunity to have one-on-one conversations with the director coaches, where they will share ideas with you and you can have an interactive conversation with them back and forth. Jerry?
Before we wrap, please go to your calendar invite. Make sure that you find your own individual breakout room link. And if you can't find the link, we'll be adding help information in the chat. So before you drop off, copy the text to either join the Help Center breakout room or email to get your links resent. Once you find your breakout room links, please go ahead and drop off the meeting and click on your breakout room link. Thank you so much for participating. Thank you for being part of this movement. Now time for some networking. Goodbye. Thank you.
And have fun.
fun.
Yay, let's do it. Let's do it. Breakout rooms now.